there are some little practical details that take a surprising amount of time and testing to get just right. For instance, it took us many playtests to figure out just how fast Alex should move. It turns out that her falling behavior looks and feels the best when she's moving faster than the player's normal speed, but slower than the player's sprint speed.
Тревога. Зарегистрирован нарушитель. Тревога. Зарегистрирован нарушитель.
Ничего себе!
This dropship scene was another case where we had to be clever about drawing the player's attention to something cool that was about to happen, which the player could easily miss if they weren't looking in the right direction. We used a solitary soldier firing at the player to draw their attention to where the dropship climbs into view. Once the player notices the dropship, there's a good chance they'll watch it until the payoff when it crashes.
Начать диагностику. Начать диагностику. Резонантная сингулярность. Резонантная сингулярность.
Секунду. Есть.
Начать диагностику.
Похоже на грузовой лифт. Он доставит нас к ядру.
This is where some player training pays off. After earlier training players on the use of ball sockets, they get a sort of live fire test here starting the elevator. This is the beginning of the level's puzzle arc, where basic gameplay mechanic is made increasingly more complex by layering other puzzle elements on it. The first puzzle only requires that the player find a combine ball and put it in the socket.
Гордон, здесь опасно находиться. Надо запустить лифт. Похоже, мы на правильном пути. Берегись! Осторожнее! Еще! С этим лифтом. Сможешь его запустить? как в прошлый раз.
Стабилизации. Открыть автоклавы.
Here we're presenting the player with a now familiar ball socket challenge, but we're also bridging into some new training, showing the player that stalkers can destroy the Combine energy balls.
Что происходит? Смотри, сталкер. Что он делает?
Всеобщая тревога. Внутренним стабилизации.
Отлично!
Открыть автоклавы.
Поехали! Поехали! Смотри, внизу площадка. Сойдем и посмотрим, что из этого выйдет. Берегись! Беги! Ай, едва успели.
Late in development, we changed the art for these doors so that players understood they were entering the core area. It turned out that having Alex talk about the area wasn't enough to give playtesters the sense that they'd finally arrived at the core.
Гордон, кажется, мы пришли. Осторожнее. Не понимаю, что они защищали? Похоже, они намеренно пытались взорвать реактор. Но зачем? Боже мой! Реакция зашла очень далеко. Надеюсь, доктор Клейнер не ошибся. Попробуем пройти через центр управления.
This is another key vista, this time showing the core. It's a visual payoff for the player's success in getting here, and, simultaneously, a way to present the player with a view of the next challenge.
Кабина стоит на нижнем уровне, где находится ядро. Попробую вызвать ее. Показатели зашкаливают. Надеюсь, еще не поздно переключить поле герметизации. Слава богу, ты знаешь, что делаешь. Ну, вот и лифт. Гордон, как мне жаль, больше я ничем не могу помочь.
Creating a believable, interesting relationship between Gordon and Alex is made a lot tougher by the fact that Gordon never talks. This elevator scene presented a nice little opportunity to have Alex express some emotion in a situation where Gordon isn't really in a position to respond.
Возвращайся скорее.
Внимание! Опасный уровень радиации.
The core design posed a lot of difficult challenges. Generally speaking, if the gameplay in a particular map isn't working, we can simply cut the entire area. This wasn't true of the core, because we knew it was critical to the story. On top of that, designing Citadel gameplay is often a bigger challenge than working out areas in City 17, largely because Citadel levels have a narrow set of gameplay tools. there are less enemy types available, and the player is usually only armed with the gravity gun. Because of this, we had to go through many iterations of the core design. One of the earlier prototypes was a kind of futuristic version of Operation, where players had to use the gravity gun to cleanly manipulate rods into slots in the core. That didn't work, partly because playtesters found that their view was obstructed by the rods, which made it frustratingly difficult to manipulate them with any kind of precision. We prototyped, playtested, and abandoned several other designs until we finally arrived at one that was fun, while still being challenging enough to give players the sense that they'd accomplished a significant goal.
The difference between skill levels isn't just a matter of damage dealt and received. For instance, in easy mode, we increase the length of time a combine ball survives before exploding, putting less pressure on the player to get the ball into a socket.
The ball tubes are an example of us working within our available toolkit to create a puzzle around a recognized concept. As a physical navigation puzzle, it's different from what the player has experienced before, and it's challenging while not being a binary succeed or fail situation. There are a number of ways to approach this puzzle. In addition to simply dodging, jumping, or ducking the balls, the player can grab or deflect them with his gravity gun, or pick up the hatch and use it as a shield to block the incoming barrage.
Combine core was another new space that needed to stand out from the rest of the environment. We wanted the core to look hot and dangerous, but still be distinct from the fires and the cool blues of the rest of the Citadel. The core became the primary light source in this space, and in conjunction with the white set of Combine materials, we created an extreme contrast to the normally dark values of the Citadel metals.
The core sphere was one of the last special effects that we finished. To achieve this effect, the core uses animated textures, flow maps, melon map diffraction and specularity, as well as volumetric particulate matter rendering, which takes advantage of the core being a sphere.
The higher contrast white Combine motif of the core sets it apart from the rest of the Citadel and heightens its importance within the visual style of Combine aesthetics. It also helps enhance the perception of heat and radiation in the space.
Процесс стабилизации ядра прекращен.
The core was a central element of this part of the game, and as much as possible, we wanted to constantly reinforce its importance. Zigzagging through the space in 3 dimensions while navigating a variety of challenges let us present a few different visual and gameplay perspectives on the same space. By letting the player see the core from a bunch of different angles, we were able to give them a real sense of its scale. The second ball tube presents a variation of the pattern the player learned in the first ball tube. While the first tube can be crossed slowly, by crouching and maneuvering your way up, the second ratchets up the pace, requiring a quicker, more responsive approach.